Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to WatchBox and Dubai Watch Week 2021. I'm here with Czapek CEO Xavier De Roquemaurel. Welcome.
Thank you. Tim, always a pleasure. So, remind me, is Mosso or Mosso?
It's Mosso, and thank you for asking.
Mosso.
If I butchered...
It's a challenge for a French-born, now Swiss guy to pronounce correctly. My English is perfect, I would say, if I was a Pink Panther.
Je parle un peu de français.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a quick question, going all the way back to the beginning, because a lot of folks are going to be introduced to the Czapek brand for the first time in this video. You started as something of a Kickstarter campaign. How did that work?
Well, it started with, we thought, we hear a lot of stories about strategy and great vision. We had a vision for Czapek, which was to bring back Czapek in the galaxy of an independent watchmaker. And we had very little information on him, but we knew enough at our age of 45 to know that the guy was incredible because of the companies he started, because of his first partner, because he opened the first watchmaking boutique of the Plasmodome, because he had Napoleon III as a client. We knew these bits and pieces were little, but enough for us to believe this is one of the greatest watchmakers of the 19th century. Let's bring him back. Second thing, when you're 45, you don't believe anymore in Christmas, and you don't believe anymore that a billionaire is going to save you, finance you, let you work, and have the right decision-making process. You know that doesn't happen. So you think, maybe we are the luckiest guy on earth. I mean, watch-loving guys. And maybe we should just seek for other guys like us. And maybe we should just create value by sharing value. So that was the idea behind doing crowdfunding equity. So selling shares, which is actually not new. It's just repackaged as crowdfunding, but it was 200 years ago, it was already like this. You know, people would go out and try to find partners and sell shares of their company. So that's what we did, and we actually found quite a few people in Switzerland, in France, in Czech Republic, where they were really keen about the brand, in Poland, of course, because it's also Polish, and in the US, where we have quite a few shareholders. And they became, at the same time, shareholders, investors, advisors, friends, customers, ambassadors of the brand. So you know some of them, and that's probably how you got in touch with Czapek. And that was a sort of a secret weapon for us. So it helped bring the brand on the market in a different way than other brands had done. And it helped us a lot in the end.
Almost like a subscription sort of arrangement, because like you said, some of those people who invested also became some of your first customers.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, in terms of developing watches, you started flat-footed, so right out of the gate you might have had money, but you needed to produce product. How did you go about creating the first Quai de Bergues models?
So we went back, and that was the second decision we made. We decided that we would be true to Czapek, that it was not a question, we would never let our egos go on our way. We would keep low-key, and that's really part of the culture of the company, and work, for Czapek because he deserved to be put back on the first level, to be known again. And so when we were seated with Harry and Sebastian and myself, we would always put a fourth chair, and in that fourth chair, we would imagine that Czapek was alive, that he was 35, but he had the experience of 200 years of watchmaking. And thanks to this idea of bringing the past to the future, and instead of looking to the past with a loop, we actually imagine the models today. And we imagine what he would love to do after. And funnily, from that first model to the third one that was this one, and to this one, which is the fourth one, it's a direct line, and people who are used to knowing us, they directly see the connection. Well, when you look at the first watch we took as inspiration, the 3430, which was made in the 1850, and that was really the inspiration for creating that watch, you understand that there is a code, a design code, a design language. This is the language of Czapek creating watches. And that language, if we speak of today, it has to also touch the sports segment. It has to also be capable to make sport watches.
Now, you've been exceptionally open about the suppliers you partner with. I think you've almost been so proud of them that you made them a prominent feature. Medalum makes the dial, Medalum's name is on the dial. Chronode is assisting with movements, you're very open about that. LAB makes cases. Again, you work with great suppliers, you have nothing to hide. Talk about how that contrasts with other brands that want to pretend they make every single thing.
I think this is a bit over. I think, I mean, if you want to sell watches to collectors, you really need to speak to them as their friends, as your friends, as people who are next to you, you know. And there is not a question of being higher and being the brand and being teaching anyone. We're in the same community. We're the same people. We talk the same language, and in the end, they all knew it was not so true. To which extent, maybe they discovered a lot more in the recent years. But I think that now many people, and by the way, we are not the first one to start. I think the first one who started that, I think, was Chrono Suisse, followed by Max. And we were the third ones, but we really believed in that idea because we believed in the idea of établissage, which is an old idea. So 200 years ago, in the area of Le Loc, La Chaux-de-Fonds, in the Franche-Montagne, this area, people were working in the winter on the watchmaking and in the summer in the field, okay, farmers. And everybody was doing a different piece. So you had the ruler, you had the rabilleur, you had every kind of type of job, you know. And that the way to do a nice watch was to be an orchestra chief and make everybody work together. In Geneva, it was a bit different with Les Cabinotiers, which tended to put together everybody in the same building to have a sort of easiness of working. So now we're a bit the same. So Chronod is 2 floors above us. Inodeco is next door. We even have a direct access. Inotech is 100 meters from us. So we really work in between the Cabinotier, in between the old spirit of the farms. But we believe in that because we work with the best people on earth making that type of job. And there is no way we could become them, not even in 10 years. Because this is their dream, this is what they do since they were born or since they were adults, and they dream of doing that even better. So each of us have his own dream or his own part of the watchmaking dream, and our job is to put together all these guys. And it's not our watch, it's as much their watch as our watch. And that's why we came to the slogan, we collect rare people, because the first rare people were actually their partners, the supplying partners.
And like you said, établissage is very old. Historically, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron, every brand that has any kind of reputation, for years and decades worked on the établissage principle. But you can farm out production of parts, but not the original idea. The design is all yours, the inspiration for each model. Take me through the process of how you design a watch, because you now have 4 on the market. You started with the Quai de Bergues, you're now up to the Antarctique. How does a watch come to be at Czapek?
That's a good secret question to which I wonder if I was really willing to hear that question, because it's part of our secrets. But I don't think people can reproduce it. So let's dig into it. Okay, we are 2 people, Adrian, the designer, and myself. And we work a bit as a couple creating a baby. So I'm more going to give the brief. I'm not capable to design, not at all, which is a chance. So I'm not interfering into design. I'm interfering into the expression of design toward beauty. And I'm interfering into transmitting to Adrian what I believe is l'air du temps. So we start with the brief. We make a few designs. Once we get to a certain level of clarity, then I check with the board members and a few more shareholders. And I listen to what they say and what they don't say. It's sort of an internal market study, but it's not a market study because these guys are going to buy the watches. It's their watches. So they get excited. They get the goosebumps, you know. This is what is important. And then from what they say and they don't say, I extract a trend. Okay? I extract a cluster. I extract a style. And then we rework. And we rework, go like a pâquerette, like a flower like this. Every time we reach an end and it's not good, we go back to the center, we restart like that. Okay? And then there is one point where we say, oh, that's right. So then we get to that second level, if you want, where the watch starts to be existing. And I check that watch with more people. So all the advisory board, about 20 shareholders. I told you that these shareholders were going to become our advisors. So that's how we involve them. Of course, when a shareholder has a huge collection, his voice has a certain sensitivity to me, but I also know his collection, so I know what it is sensible to. That's why it's not a market study. I can interpret what he's saying, okay? And then we do this back and forth, which is endless, of improving, and then we work together, Adrian and myself, working on improving everything. And then we involve the supplying partners. And they always have their say. So, for example, if you take the Antarctique, we had made a complex case. And Aurélien Boucher from AB Product came to us and said, guys, it's time to simplify. Beauty comes from simplification. Look, I redo the case for you, thinking about how the machine is going to drill and mill and create it. And he simplified it totally. And then that's how these two curves, which are canceling each other. So you see that curve here.
Yes.
Okay, and there is a curve like that. Okay. Now, if you look at 45 degrees, it's straight. Okay, that's a trompe-l'œil effect. That's a visual effect. It's straight, but it's not. The two curves are canceling each other.
That's true.
This is born through these exchanges, where we just have fun around the table and we're just, everything is allowed. There is no barrier. Everybody can be crazy. Everybody can drop a bad idea. Nobody is going to joke. And from this exchange, we get to the final first prototype. Okay? And we still have to work because we don't let a watch go until we're happy. It doesn't matter if it's Watches and Wonders or if it's Baselworld or if we miss it, we miss it, but we are not going to launch if we are not reaching a certain point of beauty.
Yes.
Now, is beauty, something that is rational or something that is subjective? Is beauty subjective?
I would say yes.
So, when I was younger, about 20 years ago, at night, I think at 2 a.m., I was silly watching TV at 2 a.m. We all did that kind of stupid things one night that we don't want to sleep. And I fell on a program about an American group of scientists who were trying to find out about beauty from a scientific understanding. And this is where the methodology of work of the Americans is so interesting, because it's so methodological. So they picked up 50 images of beautiful women and less beautiful women, okay? And then they go across the globe to Eskimos, to Aborigines, Indians, Middle East people, African people, European, Americans, of course, South Americans, and they ask them to rank the images, okay? And there are two learnings from that. One is that everybody agrees on the top 5 and the bottom 5. Everybody. And then everybody disagrees in the middle. So when you make a product and people start having really opposed position, it's not that one is right or the other is wrong. It's that you need to rework. Go back to your desk and rework until you get everybody to say, wow, this is fantastic. So this is how we design. This is our, and we have a huge design culture in Czapek. That is what makes Czapek so unique. And this is the process and the methodology we follow. And it's disclosed for the first time today.
You heard it here. So I'm going to just throw this out, but I would think that a new brand starting up in the year 2021 would probably start with a sports watch. You started with 3 dress watches, though the chronograph is highly water resistant, so I'll give you that. But this is now the year of the Antarctique. The last year you've come out with a sports watch. It's clearly what the market wants. Are you seeing strains on supply that make it difficult to meet demand with this watch?
I've anticipated that. So in June this year, I've ordered the escapements for next year. So I'm confident we're going to meet the market needs. But it takes so much time between the moment you realize you miss and the moment you finally get the components that there is a lot of tension in the supply chain. I wouldn't say that we're going to miss one component. Thank God we produce everything in Switzerland. We even now for the next model we're going to launch in March. We even have the sapphire glass that is going to be Swiss made, and this proximity allows us for a much better control, understanding what is the problem, can we resolve, and at one point to say no, stop, now that's enough, stop putting us backward, in the allocation of production, because this is what happened, You're supposed to be happening in 2 weeks, and then the big brand comes in, and then you're 3 weeks. So there's one point where you say, no, we spoke about that, so you stop doing that, you produce our pieces. You can do that if you can sit with the guys that are your friends, you've been working with them for years now, and we trust each other. So if this is broken, then there is no point to go further into doing more business. And these guys, remember that even during the crisis, we were there every day with them, working and helping to develop the business. So there is this, even if we are very small, there is this loyalty in between us, and that's key.
I think it's really interesting that you have to compete with bigger brands for components like escapements. You have to get basically into the same queue with them. Does it make it difficult to meet demand? Because I know you started with the Antarctique standard three-hand with a date. Now you have the Retrapont, which has been very well received. Larger, bolder, but also a more upscale watch and probably being built at smaller volumes. Do you find it tough to get components for that smaller volume watch in the current marketplace?
No. It's more to get the component perfect.
Okay.
Which is tough, because there has been a lot of disorganization with the pandemic. Some companies have had to let go some workers. So what is tough is to get the exact perfect quality that we are requiring. So sometimes we would say everybody's delayed, so nobody's on time. That's like the starting point. That's okay. We can even deal with that. So we can foresee that there will be a 1 month, 2 months delay.
Yes.
What is much more difficult is when suddenly you have half of your production that has to go back to the starting point of the production chain because the quality is not perfect. And this does happen sometimes. So it delays everything, it delays the whole process of getting the watch out.
And so I assume response to the Antarctique and Antarctique Retrapont has just been tremendous. Are you feeling that from all your global markets?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, you have to cut that into microeconomy. Before there was, it's like fishes in a lake. So you were looking for 3 different fishes that were at every end of the lake and one in the middle. And suddenly you wake up and all these fish, they are connected with social media. And it's not a lake, it's an ocean. So suddenly, when you multiply 3 by 3 or 3 by 10, and that's a huge amount of orders that come to you. But proportionally to the market, it's still very, very small. It's a micro wave, a micro thing.
How many watches are we talking? Because I know that there were a few hundred pieces initially of the various versions of the Antarctique. How many watches does Czapek make per year, just in terms of scale?
So last year we were doing 150 watches. This year we should be doing between 300 and 400. Now you might say it's strange for a CEO to not know exactly that number because it's a big variation.
It is.
But this comes to your question before. When I told you got delays, so if one piece is delayed, then that means a whole batch of maybe 10, 20, 40 watches might not be produced on time to be shipped before the end of the year. And then if there is one problem of quality, we might have the same issue, which is to say, yeah, we have the components, but some are not okay, so we're going to reduce that quantity. So it's really being decided now, and on December 10, we will know the exact final figure. And next year, we plan to, again, double the quantity.
So you're hoping next year somewhere between 600 and 800 watches? Also, another question just about service, because I know when people are getting into new brands, oftentimes they're worried about being able to get parts and service. It's much like when European cars came to the United States in the 50s and 60s. People were worried about buying the Jaguar because they didn't know if they could get the parts to service it. What is your arrangement for servicing these watches, and are the suppliers involved in that, like Chronode, for example?
No, on the Antarctique, we really have created our network of service center. We understood that the service centers was a fate, we had to have them. So instead of waiting the longest to have them, we did the opposite, which is to give as early as possible the best service to everyone willing to have a good service. So we have opened in the US, in near Miami, in Coral Gable, a service center for the US. We have one in France for Europe, so for the Eurozone, so we don't have to pass borders, and it's very quickly repaired, and it's really 5 minutes from where we work on the other side of the border. And we have for Dubai, we have Mosso Jewelers, who is our partner here, which actually I'm going to train and explain to them the different things to do just after Dubai Watch Week on the 29th.
So in general, in most major markets, the watches...
And we have Japan, and we have Japan where it started also with a service center. So we cover the world, and the day we will need to open 1 or 2 or 3 more service centers, we will.
Excellent. So let me ask you one last question. What's the response been here at Dubai Watch Week to the Antarctique and the entire model line?
Well, incredible, as it was in Watch Time New York, for example. Or, most of the people have seen it and have never had the chance to see it and to touch it and to feel it and to wear it on the wrist. So we have it immediately since even before the opening, people starting to come and say, can I have it on the wrist now? Can I see? Can I make a picture? So it's really fun. It's good also because, you know, it's a momentum. It's a moment of joy, of shared pleasure, because this started also with conversation with these very same watch collectors. And some watch collectors are very advanced in the way they think, and they can imagine the way they would like to have a bespoke watch. We do a lot of bespoke pieces and personalized watch.
Customs.
Customs,
Don't bury the lead there. That's a big deal. You can get your watch customized.
Well, we speak about personalization, customization, and bespoke, okay, which are three different levels. Personalization, it's one watch that you have, and you want to have something special added to it, and it does not change fundamentally the watch. Customization, we're going to go deeper. We're going to change the hand, maybe we're going to change a print on the dial. We're going to really modify slightly the watch. And bespoke, we're going to start from an existing movement, but we might change something about the movement, change the case, change the dial. This is like open to every crazy idea. So some of the watch collectors, they are capable to imagine that. They need a base to imagine. But most of your clients, they are like what Steve Jobs was saying, you know, don't ask a customer to invent your product. You have to invent your product. But be with them to understand what product would make them dream, you know, what product they would love to have. And this is why this interaction during the events is so important. In a shop, you don't have that many watch collectors coming in such a short period of time, in such an open way, fun way, cool way, you know. So here it's really two sides, and from the conversation 4 years ago, 2 years ago, now the Antarctique is born. Because it represented really the idea of having a beautifully open movement. The brief was horological erotism. Okay, so we spoke about the theory of doing a brief and doing creativity. Now there is a practical one. I wanted to have the idea of lingerie. I wanted the idea that we were going to reveal not everything, but as much as possible to make a very sexy movement. No? But then it was a sport watch. So then we had to work on what kind of metal we're using. We're using a very strong version of the German silver.
Yes.
With 13 atoms of nickel instead of 12 atoms of nickel. So you have to go deep, you know. It's not an excuse to not have a technical knowledge or the technical education. Whatever your education is, you have to go deep in watchmaking and try to understand. You don't have to redo it, because it's impossible to cover all the knowledge at the level of doing it, but to understand it, yes, that's what is required.
Outstanding.
So, yeah, it's a moment of the pleasure of seeing a baby born out of so many fathers and mothers across the globe, and especially here in Dubai.
Truly an exceptional piece, and really making its in-person debut after 2 years of isolation. A lot of folks are seeing this in the metal for the first time. Xavier, thank you so much.
Tim, always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for your love for watches, because you are transmitting that to so many people around. It's great.
Time out, Tim out, Xavier out, and thanks for logging on.